I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the School District of Waukesha Board of Education. It's a special meeting held on August 30th, 2021. Sue, will you please take the roll call?
William Baumgart.
Here.
Corey Montiel.
Here.
Greg Dietz.
Here.
Amanda Roddy.
Here.
Kelly Piasek. Here. Patrick McCaffrey.
Here.
Anthony Zenobia.
Here.
Karen Reinacek. Here. Joseph Como.
Here. And Sue, will you also verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you. Before we get started, I'm just going to ask that everyone respect each other in the audience, respect the board members. I'd like to have this be an orderly meeting tonight. So if you could withhold from applause and comments and cheering and those kinds of things that would detract from our debate and discussion tonight, that is very much appreciated. Also, would you please silence your phones at this time? And we do have two action items tonight. The first action item is the approval of a candidate for assistant principal at the Les Paul Middle School. Amanda?
The administration is recommending Christopher Caraban for the position of assistant principal at Les Paul Middle School. Mr. Caraban, is that correct? Caraban, thank you. Values building relationships with students and staff. He brings a skill set and knowledge of instruction, leadership, data analysis, school improvement processes, management, and school system structure. Christopher has been referred to by his supervisors, as an agent of change for the good. His strong work ethic and knowledge of behavior management, PBSI, and understanding of the power of collaboration and connection will be an asset to our middle school team. Christopher comes to us with over 4 years of experience as an assistant principal in MPS. He was an assistant principal at the Lincoln Center of the Arts for over 3 years before transferring to Rufus King International High School. Prior to his administrative experience, Christopher was a special education teacher. Christopher has a master's degree in administration and supervision from the National Louis University, teacher certificate from Lakeland College, and a BA in communication from UW-Milwaukee. Christopher's resume and contract were provided in your Friday packet. Salary and benefits will be according to the middle management policies. Mr. President, I move to approve the recommendation and contract of Christopher Caraban for the position of assistant principal of Les Paul Middle School.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baumgart. Discussion? Mr. Baumgart?
Purely by coincidence, I had the opportunity last week to meet Christopher over at Les Paul. And he's the kind of guy that immediately you begin to like and understand that he's social, easy to talk to, really ready to work here in Waukesha. This, I think, was a plan that he's been working on, and it worked for him. And he lives here. He's very interested in what's going on here. So I have great hope for him.
Other questions, comments? Dr. Piasek?
Mr. Como and Mrs. Roddy, I would just like to propose that we table the approval of this administrative contract, no disrespect to the candidate, but I think under the circumstances that this board has seen over the last few days, I personally do not feel prepared to weigh a judgment on all the details of this contract.
Is there a second? Is that a motion?
I'm moving.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay. There's no discussion. We'll take a vote on that.
Greg Dietz.
No.
Karen Reinacek.
Oh, hold,
We're voting on that, right?
table, yes.
Table.
Okay.
This vote is to either table the motion that was just made to hire the candidate for the assistant principal at Les Paul. Yay vote or yes vote is yes, we will table it. A no vote is we will continue to move forward with that motion. Sue, why don't?
Okay, I've got Bill Baumgart. Karen Reinacek. Aye. Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
No.
Kelly Piasek.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
No.
Greg Dietz.
No.
Anthony Zenobia.
Aye.
Amanda Ratty.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
No. In which way? To table it? Okay. This has been tabled, and we will move on to our second action item tonight and discussion item. So we are moving on to the approval of a recommended, discussion and possible action on the National School Lunch Program and Seamless Summer Option. I'd like to start out with administration on this.
Sure. So to get us started tonight, behind me we have Mr. Clark and Ms. Stack, and they're going to walk through an introductory phase.
Yeah, I thought I should start out tonight by clarifying what the board's action in June did and did not do. As I'm sure everyone's aware, we've had a lot of inquiries on that decision. And as we talk to more and more people, there's more and more confusion whether those are local people or national people. I'm not sure, but what the board did was to reinstate the National School Lunch Program, which would provide assistance to our neediest students in the platform that we have used going back decades. I'm not sure when that started, but a lot of people have left that action in reading and researching whatever they're doing, and a lot of times they've referenced that we are not feeding kids, and I just want to make sure that was never discussion. It was not included in the action. We were simply returning to the plan that we had used before pre-pandemic, and that included not only the lunch program, but also the universal breakfast programs at the schools that qualify under that program. And then I'll just outline the two programs and what the board's choosing between. This is just a very brief outline, so there's certainly more information on DPI's website.
Can you talk up a little bit more, Darren? People are
There's
having
certainly more
trouble.
information on DPI's website if you're interested. The first one is the National School Lunch Program, which I referenced before. This is the free and reduced lunch program that most of you are probably very familiar with. It's implemented via an application process and then on a scale of economic factors, determinations made on level of assistance. Again, none of those rules are ours. We just implement someone else's program. The other program that the board has the option to proceed with is the Seamless Summer Option program that would allow us to run through the regular school year under approved waivers by the federal government. So even though it just says summer, it's all year round because of the waivers. So there's been some confusion, which I completely understand related to that. The current waiver, as currently written, and these things can change, is set to expire at the end of the 2021-22 school year. This program would make available meals at no cost to all children 18 and under, regardless of their enrollment status in the school district of Waukesha. For community participants, meals would continue to be distributed at community pickup sites like we've done for the last year. For STW students, the meals would most likely be processed through their school site. So that's the logistics behind that. One last thing I think is worth noting, the Seamless Summer Option, which the board is considering tonight, is not the same program that we've been operating under during the health emergency. That was the Summer Food Service Program. I only bring that up so when and if, whatever the outcome of tonight's conversation is, you will notice slight changes in logistics, days we can operate, small things like that. The kids will actually be scanning for the meals they take. But that's, again, all written into the federal guidelines and we have no say over. But just in case there's any confusion, if we go with that option, I just want people to know, we're not driving that as a district. That's above us. So hopefully that background information helps people in the audience and the board to have a little better understanding as to the two programs that we're discussing.
And then to build on that from the administrative perspective, unlike our previous conversations related to this topic, we felt it would be helpful to forward a recommendation to you in an attempt to better frame the discussion tonight. So it is our recommendation administratively that the School District of Waukesha rescind the board's previous action as it relates to the National School Lunch Program at the June 9th board meeting and implement the federal summer seamless option, including open and restricted sites. Enrollment in the seamless summer option would be for the 21-22 school year, and it would end on the last day of school of the 21-22 school year. The reasoning behind this administrative position is our belief that we can better capture as many kids as possible under this program, and that it would help families who may not qualify for free and reduced lunch, but who are also experiencing situational poverty due to the pandemic. And so I have that for you for your consideration, and we're happy to answer any questions that you would have.
Any questions of administration? Mr. Baumgart?
This was presented as a movement by Dr. Siebert.
Well, he's not making a motion.
I know.
No.
But one of us can.
Yes.
I will make the motion presented by Dr. Siebert.
Why don't,
Want me to read it?
please read
I
it.
move that the School District of Waukesha rescind the board's previous action as it relates to the National School Lunch Program at the June 9th, 2021 board meeting and implement the federal seamless summer option, including open and restricted open sites. Enrollment in the seamless summer option will be for the 2021-22 school year and end on the last day of school for the 2021-22 school year.
Point of order, Mr. President. It is not acceptable for us to make a motion to rescind a decision. We voted unanimously on a decision. We need to first make a motion to reconsider the decision that we already took.
I'm not sure from Robert's rules if that is correct.
Now,
Anthony?
I have a question. With all due respect to administration, and with all due respect to Dr. Siebert, the statement that was read before this motion was presented to us is not accurate. I understand why the statement is made, and I have empathy for the statement itself. But this motion is being presented to the board to act on because of intimidation and threats that every board member in here has received, that every staff member in here has received, and staff members in here that have not received. And for us to go back on a decision that was made without proper discussion is wrong. And it is not, it is, you can understand how flustered I am. I know all of you are too. And this is not a reasonable way to handle this. If we've called a special meeting, we should at least hear why it was called. We made this decision in June, unanimously. That decision should at least be rescinded. Why would that not be voted on? Administration recommended this. Upon the recommendation of administration, upon many meetings in the F&F committee and in the board meeting, this decision was made unanimously. Why should we upend all of that work one motion that is under, I would say, under duress, under threats of intimidation? This is not the way to do this.
Well, and just so you know, this meeting was called by both, asked by Mr. Montijo and Mr. Dietz. And I should have said that in the beginning of the meeting, and I apologize for that. So the special meeting can be called by board members, and these are the board members that asked for this particular meeting. Now, I'm not sure from a Robert's Rules perspective, we have a motion that's been made. I don't know if we can just stop. You asked for a point of order, so we need to understand the point of order, essentially before we continue here.
The
Dr.
problem,
Piasek.
Mr. Como, is that the motion to rescind is bucketed with a new motion. That's the problem. We have to address the decision that we already made, whether it's a rescind or a reconsider. I want the community to understand that what's been handed to us on this piece of paper starts with, I move that. So the recommendation has been handed to the board to make a motion to take action.
That was just representing.
I understand that, but this is the problem with how these processes go. So I am asking, and if Mr. Baumgartz wants to go ahead and somebody wants to second that motion, you know what I'm going to do next. So this is inappropriate to pair an action with a rescind statement. And I would just like to have that separated. But if we have to take
Mr.
the
Baumgart?
roundabout way, we can do that too.
Yeah, I believe she's right. I believe the right thing for me to do at this time is to, first of all, I don't know if I can just withdraw my
Yes, you may.
previous motion.
Yes, you may.
I would like to make a new motion.
Okay.
New motion would simply be, I move that the school district of Waukesha rescind the board's previous action as it relates to the National School Lunch Program at the board, June 9th, 2021 board meeting, period.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
By Amanda Roddy. Discussion? Mr. Montiel?
Thank you. I will try to keep this short, but it probably won't be. All 9 of us were elected to this board because we chose to throw our hats in the ring. We knew at some point it may come to this. Whether we knew it would come to this extent and the vitriol and the insults and trying to destroy our businesses is, to me, unfathomable. I was told to put a bullet in my head. I was told that children would die and that students would starve. It's unacceptable, but that's okay. I'm on here for a reason, and I can live with it. The problem I have is I have a wife and 2 children. 2 children live in this district and go to school in this district. If I hear anything that they are made part of this, it is going to be very unfortunate for those people who do that. It is something that is way over the line. Particular board members have had things done to them that are completely unacceptable. They are more than able to defend themselves, but I want everybody to know that if they thought that worked this time, it hasn't. If they think it's going to work in the future, it won't. It's unacceptable, and I simply, as one of 9, will not stand for it. What is even, I think, more concerning is that the public has attacked one of our administrators who does a fantastic job for this district. He is not elected. He doesn't bear the responsibility that we do, but he does a fantastic job. Mr. Darren Clark is an unbelievable asset to this district. As part of his job in committees is to raise the other side of issues. He will oftentimes, if you watch those committees, bring up the other side of an issue. He'll talk about it. Never in 3+ years, I think I've been on this board, have I ever been able to tell what his personal opinion is, including this last time. So the attacks on him and his family are uncalled for and should cease and should never happen again. It is unbelievable. As far as my position on this, it has evolved. I have read everything. I've taken phone calls from throughout the country, as we all have, Alaska, California. I've heard these terrible things, but I've also heard a lot of wonderful things, a lot of well thought out, reasoned statements. From the time in June up until now, although I have varied, nothing has changed in my opinion. The program we have is imperfect. The federal lunch program, I think, needs some supplements for this district, but I think it's okay. Is it perfect? No. Can we do more as a district and as human beings to help this and help the students? Absolutely. Should we? Yes. But that's not what we're here to deal with today. So I don't support the motion. I don't support withdrawing what we did. And if it does come to a vote to support the summer SUMAS option, I won't support it. So that's just me.
The comments? Mr. Dietz?
I know just upon reflection, I made the earlier votes without really looking at all the implications, and I wasn't really informed, and I apologize for that. It's another reminder to me just how important it is that our votes are really far-reaching, and the effects are sometimes never seen by us as individual board members. The truth is that many of our students are hungry throughout the school day, and we have the ability to do something about that. And I've directly seen that for the last 55 years of my life, every single day. All of us, I think, have been negatively impacted by COVID. Many of our families have experienced or will experience hardships during COVID, and many unique and unexpected circumstances lie ahead. The bottom line is that these are stressful times. It is well known that hunger directly impacts our students' behavior and their ability to learn. Many families are just above the threshold for applying for reduced lunch. Sometimes pride gets in the way. Many of the emails and phone calls that I have were from kids whose parents had an issue with pride and it got in the way, sometimes rightfully so. We also have countless stories of teachers, paraprofessionals, administration giving kids food throughout the school day just to make sure that they can move forward and not be hungry. I'm going to be in support of the federal seamless summer option for our students for the upcoming school year, and I feel it's the right thing for me to do as I've reconsidered my votes many, many times over.
Other comments? Discussion? Questions? Mr. McCaffrey.
So this issue came through F&F, and we did discuss it quite a bit. And the issue originally arose because the other funding that goes along with filling out the forms for free and reduced lunch. So the free and reduced lunch, or the seamless summer option, is a small slice of what the school district, the students, and the families as a whole gets from filling out those forms. If you don't fill out those forms, title funding is impacted. And I know for a fact that we have had some families in this district that have been adversely impacted by the pandemic through loss of jobs, loss of income, and those families, for the most part, are not filling out the forms, and they will not be getting the services and the benefits that come along with filling out those forms. That was our concern at F&F. That's why we wanted to go back to the old program so we could capture that data and so we could serve our families and our students the best we could. I would say, and it's obviously it's not empirical, but I would say there's several hundred families that would qualify for those services and have not filled out the forms, just by the loss of jobs that we had in Waukesha, just in the restaurant business. Go to any restaurant, and there's nobody working there. So that's how it came up. It was alerted to us by a community service provider that relies on those forms being filled up to provide services to the families within the community. And they were not receiving what they thought was the correct amount of applicants for their services. So this is not something that just is within the school district. This is a community-wide issue that we are trying to correct. So the question that I have is, if we go back and we move back to the SSO, how are we going to collect those forms? And I can say right now that the reporting in the Washington Post is a little skewed. I work in a district which we do not, at the high school level, use the SSO. We provide a option for free, but we also require those forms to be filled out. And what happens is, and at the high school, most high school students have brothers and sisters. So the family fills it out for the high school student, and the brothers and sisters or the siblings or whoever are covered under it. And that's how they're catching the vast majority of the families. And there's several other districts in the county that also do it that way. We would not be the only district not using the SSO. So how are we going to capture that data if we go to the SSO? Because I think it's very important that we capture that data. That food slice, the free lunch slice, is about maybe 10% of the funding and the services that we can provide our students. The other 90% comes from all over the community, the schools, the federal government, the state government, DPI, it doesn't matter. But we get a lot of services for our students off those forms, just not the free and reduced lunch. So how are we going to collect those forms if we go back to SSO? That's my quest, is to make sure that we are serving our students that need the help on all levels. So how are we going to get those if we vote for it? Because that's the important thing to me, is that there's plenty of other organizations, I mean, and some of them don't want their name mentioned for various reasons, that rely on those. Am I right? Yes. How are we going to capture those if we go to which are not required to fill out? And there's hundreds of families that would qualify, that are going to fall through the cracks. How are we going to just so everybody can be, assured, if we do go back to it, that we're actually going to get out there? Because if you say no, if you say, yeah, those families are just, drifting in the wind, then I'm going to have a problem with rescinding it. And I hope that everybody else on the board is going to have a problem.
Someone from administration like to?
Yeah, we have a steady communication program that we try to reach out to those families. The schools, via guidance counselors and other resources such as that, throughout the district, also try to get people to fill it out, even if they're questionable of whether they'd be eligible or not. And we've continued that effort last year, and we're ramping up, and we're doing it right now. So that's the best we have right now. But the impact and the rationale that was shared, was it 2 weeks ago now? I'm losing track, but there has been a steady decline in another application. Now, last year was a strange year. I fully recognize that, and anything in data involving last year is a hard thing to learn much from. But that is the concern. But we are making every effort that we can to capture that data.
Yeah, I would agree, Darren, that last year was an odd year, but you think it should have been an odd year with an increase in applications instead of a decrease. Can anyone tell, because the way that it was explained to me is that on, say, March 13th when we shut down, we took a snapshot, or the federal government took a snapshot of who was on a free and reduced lunch, and that's our baseline. Can anyone tell me the percent increase, and it should have been drastic, knowing how many people lost their jobs and it's been 18 months. Can anyone tell me what the increase was from March 13th or 14th or whenever it shut down, when we go till now? Do we have the numbers? I'd like to know. Because we all know, sitting around this group, that there was a lot of people that lost their jobs for the last 18 months. So that should be a pretty big increase. And if it's not a big increase, it means we're not catching those people and we're not helping them. And then the other issue I have is we were on hybrid and virtual and shut down, and I would agree it's very important. Hunger is a very big problem in the schools, and functioning in an educational setting, being hungry is very, very hard. However, we are going to have to deal with a student body that could be behind educationally, and we will need the funding that you get attached to those forms for Title I or the community services or any of that stuff to help bring our students back up to where they need to be. So, I need some assurances that we're going to be able to capture this. I think that I hope that everybody sitting around this table needs these assurances, because just to go back and just have that snapshot, I mean, that snapshot's not true. It's not a true measure of where we are as a district.
PPI does have alternate methods of collecting that data, but we've never collected it before. We've never had to. It would be a new process, and quite honestly, I can't believe whatever those processes are gonna. I can't speak to them because we've never pursued them because you didn't have to. But if the motivation isn't there to become qualified, that's the concern. The other part about the funding and why, in case people are asking, wondering, well, why is this so critical? And actually why it came to mind is the recent federal COVID response. How much did we hear about districts having disagreements on whether Title I should be the way they distribute some of the funds? And it was a major, because of our need, it really impacted the amount we got. So it's a timely topic, but I just thought I'd provide that background that there is some options, but we don't know what they are. But free and reduced has been the standard for years.
Mr. Dietz?
Mr. McCaffrey, I think that's a really good question, and one that we should, be looking at answers to. My reassurance in that would be that we would have an entire year in order to come up with those answers to make sure that kids are our parents are filling out the forms. We have some really amazing people that work in this building that have a lot of networking. I'm sure there'll be a lot of sharing. We are not the only district that would be going back. There'd be at least 400 in Wisconsin. It would be happening throughout the country. I don't think it would be for lack of ways to do that. It would be, I think, narrowing it down to the best ways in order to come up and compile that data. So I would be reassured knowing that the people that would be in charge of that would be able to accomplish that task and make sure that the rollout for that would be in a timely manner so that we could get those numbers that we truly need.
Well, I would agree. My concern on that is by the time, so we've dealt with this for 18 months, and we've had, like everybody knows, we've had challenges academically. Every district has. My concern is with that, Mr. Dietz, is that, say, in February, somebody gets their job back and they don't qualify any longer. Their child is still going to be academically disadvantaged, like a lot of our students, because of the way that we were that we needed to reach out to them educationally. So the 18 months that we lost is disheartening under this, because that's really, and I talked to somebody about this, and they brought it up to me, that what happens if in a month someone gets their job back and they're making their money and whatnot. But and I said that's true. I said, however, the problem is that they are still going to need potential services that we could be capturing right now. And I said, so if they get their job back, which I pray everybody does, and they don't receive those services because they didn't sign up, are you going to be up in arms? And the answer was yes. They're going to be up in arms because they're not receiving the services that we had no idea that they were qualified for. And that's what I mean by we are going to have a hard time, defining those kids. And when we those students are, and we define and we know who needs the help, I think that unfortunately, the time would have passed for us to capture that funding.
Mr. Baumgart?
Talking about academically first, in the next year, if we are not doing the, what's it called again?
The SSO?
Yeah, the SSO, whatever. If we're not doing that, we know that there are a lot of kids that are not going to eat, quite simply, because if we go to the national service, it's only going to be fed to those kids that sign up. Historically, we know that a huge percentage of the kids that need the help are not signing up, either because their families are afraid to admit it or whatever it is, but we do not have, the records we've been keeping are not showing the entire population that needs help. There's no question about it. That's been a standard and it's not going to get any better. So those two things put together, if we say we're not going to have the free and reduced lunch for the population, only those that sign up, we have kids that are going to be underfed and academically impaired because of that. So there's a shift here. As you have said, we need to have more records. Yeah, we need to have more records, but we're not going to get them this year, for the next year, and then we maybe have to get into them something better. But our history says we are not aware of the number of kids that need help. And at least if we go with the SSO, SOS one, at least with that, those kids will be fed. And I know we're not going to get the records that way. It would be nice if we could still do that. But we will be able to feed the kids that need it to the point of the academics that we want to get back to.
Mr. Zenobia?
If I'm hearing me there now, I wanted to go back to a couple of points that Mr. McCaffrey talked on, because in a press release that the district put out on the 24th, it showed the amount of applications that fell from 2018, 2019 being the baseline. The next year, 2019 to 20, it fell 21%. And in the past year, it fell 61%. So those applications fell that much. I know COVID was the biggest factor there. So we are already not capturing an awful lot of families from the previous year. If we just kick this can down the road another year, it may completely wipe out any chance we have of providing the service that we were providing for, my understanding, decades with the old program. Another point that Mr. McCaffrey made was, this is a community issue. And the school district can help its students. And we have an opportunity to do that, to find where there are gaps and fix them. We have that power and authority. So why we want to take this opportunity as a 9-member board and an administration who all made this decision together last month, I think we would be missing a huge opportunity for the community who has said that this is now an issue, that everybody can get behind. And I've had people, in the midst of all the horrible emails I've received, I've gotten emails from people that say, hey, I want to volunteer either way because I want to help the process. I've had, people that work in the community providing food already that say, hey, let's take the opportunity to help. So if we begin to buckle under the pressure of a national mob, for the lack of a better word, and this 9-person board that has a majority right now on the table, and backed by administration, if we say now that we're going to buckle under pressure and not fix the problem in front of us, which is a better system, what we had was better, for sure. I mean, COVID just said, let's just take a blanket program, throw it over everyone, and who cares about the kids and the families that fall through the cracks? That's what will happen. That's what happened last year. That's what's going to continue to happen until that program is probably wiped out, and then we'll go back to the federal government and ask for another one. This is going to ruin the system we had in place at every level. There's no reason to allow that to happen. None at all. We have the support of the community on both sides. This is a uniting issue. If we think the community is divided, well, from what I've heard, it is no longer divided. We should feed kids that need it. And the kids that have fallen through the gap, we can do that. I would implore everyone here to, for this board to find their fortitude and their spine and sit up and say, we are not going to be bullied nationally and even locally, to say that now we are going to take away our decisions that we have made with the best intent and the best information, and then say, no, we are not going to do that. We're just going to back up, give in, and if we do that, this whole program will fall apart. We won't get the support from the community. We won't get more people volunteering. Because it's driven by the people that say, hey, you're not feeding children, and you're going to let children starve to death. Well, a lot of those voices don't care that they've scared 3 mothers on this board, mothers in this community. They have no regard for posting children's pictures online. That's what we're dealing with today. It's horrific. I feel like reading some of the things I've gotten, but I don't think it's the time and the place for that. To sit here and pretend like we're not making this decision under stress is ridiculous. It's wrong for us to do. We right now today, for what we did, are a united front. There's no reason why we should break that. Let's go forward with it and make it better. We have that power and authority. I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
Mr. Montijo.
Thank you. As Mr. Zenobia pointed out, we get a lot of contact from a lot of different people. The people who say kids are going to starve, kids are not going to be fed. There are people who have donated to the district and classrooms and schools to pay off negative student lunch balances. I would highly encourage you to do that before you come to us or publicly shame us, to lend some credibility to your own arguments. That is the quickest way and the easiest way to help students that don't have food. The students who have a negative balance need that paid. If the argument is that the parents will not or cannot pay that, put your money where your mouth is. The district has work to do, and we will do it. We can't do it today, but I think we need to supplement those things as well. There are teachers who have granola bars. There are teachers who have pay money out of their own pocket every week. It does not take that much effort, and frankly, it takes a lot less effort than tweeting and attacking board members and other community members to show up at school and donate some food. Spend some time, talk to the teachers. What kids are suffering? What kids need food? What schools and what ages need help? Help. We will do our job. We're 9 people. But if you're going to claim that this is a community issue, step up. Put your money where the mouth is, please. Thank you.
Mr. Dietz.
The vast majority of emails that I received, and I think I read almost all of them, there were close to between 500 and 600. Vast majority supported going back to the seamless summer option. Vast majority of people that were talking about getting involved and helping hungry kids, coming up with ideas to do that, were supportive of that seamless summer option. And I fully believe that if we had a year's worth of time to actually coordinate and move forward on that, we would come up with a really long-term, long-lasting program that would benefit students for years to come. I think the biggest thing we need to keep in mind is it's the student. And sometimes I think I lose focus of that. I'm not sure if you do, but sometimes I do. And it's the student that's in the lunch line. You know, it's the student that stands there when there isn't money to pay the bill. It's a student that has to go back and sit at the table, and I've seen it hundreds of times. And I think if any of us put ourselves in that situation, if you've seen it, I'm sure it gets to you just like it does me. But the countless emails that I had and the personal stories that were told to me of how they grew up and what they went through, feelings that I would never want to experience, and I think we should do whatever we can so that students in this district not have to experience those same situations or those same situations. And we have the power to change that.
Mr. McCaffrey?
No, I definitely agree with you, Mr. Dietz, that it is the student, but it's also the student in the state of Wisconsin. On average, 60% of them can't read at grade level, and I think that's going to be more. And if you graduate from high school and you don't read at grade level, you're essentially functionally illiterate, and that's what my concern is. You're right. I work in a school, paid many hundreds of dollars of lunch fees for my students who had issues, or I set stuff up for them, or whatever. But, and my heart does go out to children who are told that they're over their allotted overage and they have to have the bologna sandwich or the cheese sandwich or whatever. But I also feel for the children who are going to, and it's going to be a higher number of them that are not reading at grade level, and we're going to move them on to the next grade level. So I don't really have a problem with the SSO. What I have a problem with is we are not going to service the students as we should. This is a one issue thing that we're dealing with right now, and it is a lot more complicated than the lunch. It really is. And you know it is. You were a principal in a school. It's a lot more complicated than that. So whether we go with the SSO or go with the national school, it really has means no difference to me. It's that other stuff that I need to have done. I need those forms filled out. I need the title funds increased. I need to know where we're going to have the free breakfast, because if you're a title school, correct me if I'm wrong, you're automatically part of the free breakfast under the national, right? Title schools get that, right?
Universal free breakfast?
Yeah.
That's more dependent on the free and reduced population.
Right, the title, yeah, right. So we're not capturing those people right now. And I mean, Greg, we've been friends a long time. I've known you a long time. And you have a lot of faith that we're going to collect that? I don't. Because I don't know what the ancillary, the other ways that they collect it. I mean, I hope we collect it. But like I said, it doesn't matter to me how we're serving the lunch. But if the only way that we're going to get that data is the one way, we have to do it. So, I mean, I need some assurances that we're going to collect that data. Because I totally agree with you. It's about the student. It's standing in the lunch line and also standing for the job interview who is having a hard time reading because they don't read at grade level in the 12th grade. Or they're taking remedial math, which is 60% of college students have to take remedial math. That's exactly the same amount that are below proficient in math in our schools in Wisconsin. I mean, there's a correlation there that's never reported on. So that's my concern. And I share your concerns, and you know I do, about the lunch line, but also about the unemployment line is a concern of mine as well.
So I haven't gotten to Dr. Piasek
I'm sorry,
lately.
Dr. Piasek.
So and then Greg,
Fine.
Okay.
I have a lot to say. First of all, with respect to Mr. Dietz, of the 500 to 600 emails I've received, most of them wish harm on me and my family. A balance of them I wouldn't be able to read to you at this meeting unless I were reading from a middle school novel. So I've scripted my words because I've seen what happens when people speak from the heart. We got to this point unanimously. We got to this point with facts that we've already heard repeated again in this room. The facts that were repeated again in this room tonight have not changed since June. Same facts. It's also a fact under the plan, I think a lot of people have missed, that 3 of our neediest schools in our district already qualify for free meals for all students, regardless of income level. So we are putting the resources where they absolutely need to be. Facts are not actually what got us here tonight. We're here because of coercion, intimidation, threats aimed at our families. Deliberately inaccurate information and twisting of words to villainize this board becomes an erroneous headline on the Washington Post, tweeted out hundreds of thousands of times, not ever being corrected. Although the community members that actually tried to correct that information by posting something on Facebook were censored by Facebook. The Democratic Party is fundraising on this issue. We are a nonpartisan board that voted unanimously on this decision, and the Waukesha Democratic Party is fundraising on this issue to hold them accountable. Whatever happened to the community of Waukesha and representatives that actually speak for the community? What are we doing here? I am so disappointed with this community right now. I have had the Waukesha Police Department at my house all weekend long. My children's pictures have been posted on Twitter. People are telling me they want harm to come to me and my family because of a decision that we made unanimously in a school board meeting. Ironically, the hundreds of thousands of people who think they know more about this issue than the 9 of us at this table, only hundreds have ever actually watched the school board meeting. The Washington Post put a horrible headline behind a paywall and put it on Twitter and left it. Shame on them. They should be held accountable. Where is the Wisconsin DOJ now? A week ago, they said that they were going to hold people accountable for threatening school board members. Where are they now? Stop.
Please.
I have more. He asked for order, but believe me, after what's happened to me this weekend, I deserve the time. This SSO program is wasteful by design. It inappropriately combines meeting basic needs for struggling families with providing federally backed perks to high-income students. The students who don't need the SSO program can't even pay for meals if they want to. The people who are advocating for this are the same people who complain about the privileges of the most advantaged. Think about how much more good we could do with our food services resources if they weren't wasted on families who had the means to pay. Mr. Montijo is right. Put your money where your mouth is. We can help each other. We don't need handouts for high-income families. And the districts in Wisconsin that don't need this program, constituents need to ask them to reconsider. It's irresponsible. Our district food service budget fund has operated on a surplus for over 5 years. So much so that we've had to actively spend down that money on building projects. That's not food in children's mouths, building projects. Please. We have the means to meet the needs of our local families with the resources that we have that are actually intended for this purpose. Unfortunately, this isn't about food anymore. This is about whether we as a board are going to allow intimidation and threats from national influencers to ruin what's important in our local schools. So here we are, neck deep in cancel culture. Never in a million years did I think my family would be doxxed. I don't know what's going on back there, but it's disrespectful.
Hey,
This,
everyone calm down, please. Don't be making your symbols and claps and signs at us, okay? Let us deliberate, and perhaps we should be talking to one another here, okay?
I have a lot to say, Mr. Cuomo, and the community has been
I
speaking
haven't
to me for
stopped
the
you.
last 3 days.
I haven't stopped
It's
you.
my turn.
Dr. Piasek, I haven't stopped you.
It is disgusting and inexcusable to me that the vile threats to my family, our jobs, have been accelerated on a national stage by members of our own community. If this is how it's going to go from now on, school board members across the country know this. You are to consult with the Washington Post, Twitter, and Facebook before making your decisions, lest you suffer dire consequences. That's what I heard over the last 3 days. This is not local control. It's bad for our district, it's bad for American schools, and it's time for parents and community members to start paying attention to the forces at work here. When the federal government is responsible for feeding all students at all times, regardless of need, they have ultimate authority, and we don't need local school boards anymore. Game over. This is how we got here. This is how we got here, people. Local entities didn't pay attention to details, just went with the flow. This is how we got CRT and filthy books and vaccine and mask mandates, all this stuff. This is why less than half of the students in our public schools are actually academically proficient in any subject. This is about more than food right now. It's so easy to take what's free because everybody else did. That's what we want. We want to take what everybody else in the state did. It's hard to agree to use the resources we have to close the gap, not become dependent on a temporary program that doesn't work for our district, for all the reasons we've already described. But doing hard things is how you change things. The people in this district who voted to put me at this table are expecting me to be fair, fiscally responsible, compassionate, and honest. That is hard, and that is what I'm doing. I believe that a reversal tonight, driven by a hostile yes vote, will tell Waukesha that their school board is beholden to a mob and can be controlled by force and fear. I have choices in front of me tonight. Stand firm in my decision, risk retaliation and threats and probable emotional and physical harm to myself and my family, or cave to the intimidation and harassment of a hateful mob outside of our district to change my position to vote for something I don't believe in. Those are the choices that you've given me. And I will tell you, for every angry mama bear out there who has stood up to fight for their children this past year, I see you. As instinctive as it is for me to abandon my values to protect my family, it is more important that we stand together now to protect ours, our community, our families. I do not support a change of course to this program because it's wasteful and irresponsible, and I am not going to back down to bullies.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Roddy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with everyone on everybody's made valid points. And I'm not even going to address the weekend because it doesn't need to be highlighted. It's over. We're here now. But I do want to state where I was coming from when we made this initial vote. So we all agreed 2020, 2021 partial has been abnormal. Everything's just gone. On multiple occasions, we've had many different community partners come through our district and our meetings here, and we've praised them and we've thanked them for all their partnerships. The timing of our vote, we thought we were, coming out of things. We wanted to get back to normal, whatever normal was going to look like. So we thought, all right, let's take this step back to being normal. My personal thought was we are a community that is rich with resources, and we're blessed to have that. We've got pantries, we have churches, we have blessings in a backpack, we have this free and reduced service. All of these things were things that I took in consideration when we voted the last time, and I own that. We have cracks, we have gray areas, we have this clear line that the government has, established, and for good reasons. Either you qualify or you don't. And we have families, because of this last year, that are struggling to get out of that gray area. We are clearly struggling and trying to figure out ways to figure out how to capture this data that we need. And I have all these things I want to tell you, but we've been here for so long. So last week I decided to come in and meet with Mr. Clark, who, by the way, I greatly appreciate as well. We have financially been in such a great position since he's been leading us, and I appreciate that. So I sat down with him and I said, what are going to be the positives and what are going to be the negatives if we reinstate or don't reinstate? Briefly, what our conversation looked like. Positives, well, everyone who wants and needs will be able to participate in this program. There's reimbursement that will come from the federal government. That's going to add funds to is it Fund 50, am I correct? Fund 50, okay, which is designated for food services. That could be from the food itself to our kitchens, correct? Right, okay. Those were some of the positives that come here. Okay, so what are the negatives? Well, or possible negatives. Well, we aren't getting the data that we need, as Mr. McCaffrey very clearly stated. We have so many things that will come from that data. We have holes there. These additional funds, while in the present look good, could hurt us later in budgeting, come budget time with the state. It was stated that there's a decrease in use. Well, the previous year, the first year that we used this, we had multiple sites with multiple day pickups. Second year we used it, this past summer, we had less sites and less days to pick up. Food never changed the whole time, though. So I bet you people got tired of the food. I have no facts to back that up. It's just a guess. So after a while, you can only take that food so much. So there were pluses and minuses to the program. But what I strive to do, and I try not to speak in absolutes, and I try not to assume, well, it's just the way it's been all this time. We don't have to change. So I looked at those negatives and said, how can we creatively come up with a way to capture all this data? I just heard you say DPI has a process. They have these forms. We just never took advantage of it because we didn't need it at the time. This Fund 50, we sat and hashed out some ideas of what we can do with those funds so that it doesn't hurt our long-term budget. The decrease in usage, well, let's get fresh food. Let's get something that the families or the children will want to eat. We have work to do. We have an opportunity to help provide for a gray area of families. We have community partners that are asking us for continued help. We have that ability to do that. These tax dollars are our tax dollars. That's why I use the program. Some here, mom and dad are going to pay for this. You're eating this. So that's why I feel. Numbers look skewed sometimes, like, more people are using it. Well, it gave me 15 extra minutes in the morning that I didn't have to make a lunch. Yes, I'm going to use it. I was brought up to be, you serve because you can and you have that opportunity to do. Doesn't mean you have to qualify people prior to doing that. You just, because you have that ability to do so. So, like I said, we have work to do. I think that I'm going to ask and go along with Mr. McCaffrey here and say we need the assurance that we will focus on finding a way to capture the data that we need so that we don't lose funds in other areas to support our families, that we utilize any outside resource, any inside resource, our counselors, even us, if we need to get in there and be with our families one-on-one and say, hey, let's get this paperwork done. And then in the meantime, be able to help families that do fall in this gray area. Is there a timeline for this? It's just 1 year. We do this 1 year at a time, correct? Okay, so then at the end of the year, we either have it or we don't, or we're just going to have to sit here and meet again. Again, saying that, this is how it's always done. History has showed us that we don't get these numbers all the time. Well, guess what? This last year, we've made all kinds of history, from ourselves to things happening in our state. And I think if we put that mindset that we can change history here, then we should make that happen. So, for what it's worth, those are my thoughts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dietz, you had your hand up before. I didn't come back to you right away.
Going back to Mr. McCaffrey, I agree that the academics are something they need to be focused on, and that's our number one priority. So have a budget surplus that maybe we should start using to address some of those needs. And looking around at what other districts are doing, or getting ideas and input from our own administration to come up with better ways, better programs to help the kids that you're describing. Help all kids. I mean, we could be looking at providing more AP classes. I mean, we can run the spectrum of what we can do to help kids. And like I said, it's not that we don't have the money there, because we've been financially responsible over the last few years. We do have access to that, and I believe we should put it to good use. And I would be more than happy to work with you to begin that process. I would just also like to say that going back to the feedback that I heard, a lot of my feedback was very sincere, very honest, open. I would not describe the feedback that I received as mob-like or destructive or harmful. I did get some of that, but the vast majority of it was caring, concerning, open-minded, thoughtful, and wanting to do what was best for kids.
Ms. Reincheck?
May I have a few minutes to defend my comments on that were taken out of context? Do I need to repeat myself? May I have a few minutes to defend my comments that were taken out of context? And it's also part of this discussion, so I don't think you'll be sorry. If you need to, just interrupt me.
Go ahead, Mr. Reincheck.
Thank you, Mr. President. On that note, Mr. Dietz, that's because you're doing what the mob wants, and
I
they're
disagree.
not threatening
Totally
you.
disagree.
Okay.
Totally disagree.
Well, if you've walked in my shoes the last few days, you might see the other side of that.
And if you walked in our shoes during COVID, you might see the other side of it.
What do you mean, our? Who is our?
My shoes.
Your shoes? As who?
My shoes.
We also walked in COVID, and that's not part of this discussion.
Now we're starting to go into a different topic. Hold it. We're starting to go into a topic now that is not part of what our motion is. So we don't need to go down that route.
Thank you. Due to my dad dying of cancer at 28, leaving my mom at 26 to work 2 jobs to try to pay the hospital bills and take care of us, we needed help, and I'm grateful for the food stamps and other public services we were able to receive. I've moved 28 times, and this is nothing compared to some. Do you know that we have 300 homeless students in our Waukesha schools? These kids are able to stay in their schools and in their classrooms with their friends and teachers no matter where they move. Our school buses will travel to Milwaukee and beyond if their parents switch shelters for consistency. They are given a warm breakfast and lunch at our schools, and we have many partners like Blessings in a Backpack who put food in their backpacks on Fridays no matter where they end up on the weekend. They can always have something to eat. Next, roughly 35% of our student population are living at or below the poverty line in Waukesha, and these kids are given a warm, free, or reduced breakfast and lunch every day they come to school, called the Federal Free and Reduced Lunch Program, as well as the food for the weekend donated by Blessings. Last August, my son came home from his first day of school and said, "You don't have to pack me a lunch tomorrow, Mom, it's free." I said, "What do you mean it's free?" I checked into it, and the federal government gave each school district the option to provide free meals for all children for COVID assistance, and we took it. I was grateful as I was out of work like many people and waiting for my unemployment checks, having to sell some possessions to make my house payments as I had 3 kids and a grandbaby living with me, and 2 of my 3 jobs were on hold as a single mom. I'd pack lunches such as peanut butter and jelly and cheese sandwiches for the last 17 years, as we did not have enough money for hot lunch for 3 kids, and I was grateful to have some help with the food last fall. When we were blessed to have our kids, my husband and I went from 2 incomes down to 1 and added 3 more mouths to feed. We were blessed to have land and chickens and a garden, so I canned much of our food, washed diapers, and bartered for most of our kids' clothes and toys, and cut hair for friends and neighbors. And someone said I must have been raised with a silver spoon. We do eat with silver, but because I bought it at a rummage sale. A few months later, after I opened my salon, I was able to pack lunches again for my kids. But I found myself making excuses like, I pay taxes, I'm actually paying for this free food. But it just didn't feel right. And what was I teaching my kids when they knew we were doing better now? We tried to raise them with humility and empathy, and working with the homeless liaison, I would tell them nameless stories about how some of our kids, who they were going to school with, didn't get tucked in at night, or didn't have a bed to sleep in, or were living multiple families in a one-bedroom apartment just to have the services we have in Waukesha for their kids. How a child sitting next to them may have heard screaming and yelling when they left for school instead of a hug and a kiss goodbye, and may not eat again after lunch until they got back to school the next morning. Our kids were moved to sponsor kids, fundraise for families, volunteer at shelters, and gave up their rooms a few times to take families in who needed help. As I found myself not wanting to pack a lunch and about to rely on the services that we have in places for the families I just spoke of, I was humbled and felt like, quote, this is a big problem, and it's really easy to get sucked into and to become spoiled and think it's not my problem anymore, it's everyone else's problem to feed my children, end quote. Those are the exact words I said at the May Finance Facilities meeting at 1 hour and 11 minutes into it, and I ask you, before more harm is done to my family, my coworkers at the salon, my board members, administration, please listen for yourself to the conversations both at the May and June finance and facility meetings without our words being taken out of context on purpose by the media. Please hear that we have never, ever stopped feeding children, called them spoiled, or plain just don't care. The spoiled I refer to is me. It's all of us. If we rely on the system when we can provide for ourselves. And we do have many services in place for those who need help. And if we don't start saying no with our government handing out more money that we can never get out from under, we won't have the services to help these exact children and families we all want to help. So who doesn't care about hungry kids? Not me, and not the Waukesha School District. All we did was go back to the program we had in place before the pandemic. And this grew worldwide attention. Our words were taken out of context and added to. This is one big game of telephone that may cost some of us our businesses. Please seek the truth for yourself. Our world needs truth. Stop relying on the media to give you the truth. Please go to the School District of Waukesha YouTube channel and look for May and June F&F meetings and listen to the discussions for yourself. If you still feel the same, that's fine. We disagree, and this is America. And to the thousands of emails, texts, voicemails every 30 seconds trying to silence me and all of us, hundreds, 424 within a few hours of bad reviews trying to destroy my 5-star business, which is no longer, bullying to the point of having a police presence, purchasing and installing security cameras at my home. By the way, try to come in my driveway now. Having to find legal help to try to dig my business out of this hole, and much more. I can't even mention. I understand most of you are passionate about kids and want to help them. So do I. And quite frankly, if you do your research, you'll see that this is my whole heart. So you've targeted the wrong girl. But most of this is political, and no matter where you fall in this, I forgive you. I have made a lot of mistakes, and I am forgiven, and I forgive you. I know God has a plan, and I trust Him completely. I have faith that no matter what happens, He is in control, and I am praying for all of you as Jesus asked us to do. No matter which program we choose to help our neediest population, we have to do so with responsibility for our future generation, the kids. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Bungard.
Yeah, just a couple comments. One, in this whole process that we've been talking here this evening, there's been a group of people that haven't been mentioned, and that's the teachers. And they're with those kids all day, every day of the week. And I honestly don't believe I've received a lot of messages from teachers. Not a one of them thought we should be using the national system, but wanted to get the kids fed through the SSO program. So I just want to make sure that was not missed, because it had been missed so far. We talk about the fact that we all voted, yes, we did, 9-0 on this, but I would say that maybe that wasn't really because we were well informed or even wanted to try to be more informed. If you look back there in June, we were dealing with things like equity, diversity. These are issues. These are different problems that are out there. The issue about books, issue about COVID, about how we're going to deal with it over the summer and the next year. We're responsible for the health and safety of those kids. Biggest one we have, of course, is always providing for education for our kids so they're academically growing. These are all issues we were faced with on June 9th. We had very little attention being faced with this issue about how we're going to feed the kids. We just knew it was going to happen. And I, like Greg mentioned, probably didn't pay as much attention as I should have. And I think there's probably 9 of us that could admit to that if they wanted to. So we voted 9-0 because that was kind of an easy thing to do. In retrospect, I wish I hadn't. In retrospect, we should have looked at the options better, the pros and cons, maybe listed them, whatever. We needed to have more information looking back 2 months. Can't do much about that now other than to try and fix it, which is why you would try to rescind. The only way you can rescind is by having somebody that voted for it make the rescinding motion, which we did do. So that gets to the point of, were we really 9 in favor of this at the time? Yes, we were. Was that the right move? I don't think so. I'll take the blame. Greg already took blame on that. So that's one issue that I wanted to get out. The other one, how many of us actually moved in our desires on which way to go this evening based on the mob scene? I didn't. I had made my decision way before that. By the way, that's not the first mob scene we've had to deal with around here. So, looking at what that mob was doing, yeah, that we looked at here over the weekend, that was terrible. No question about it. No way I could defend them. I'm sure that they probably got to the point where they're making some of us wanting to go against them just because they're a mob. But I agreed in my own head earlier in the week, or maybe even the previous week, that I like the plan to provide the free and reduced lunch for our kids, at least for this year. The kids that need it, yes. The kids that don't think they need it but should be getting it, yes. The kids that don't register, yes. These are all kids that need it so that they can academically do a better job, that their families can not suffer as much as they're suffering because of what we've been through for the last 18 months. There's very little more I can say about it. I just believe we have to take some action in the right direction, and that's the right direction, regardless of what others think, in my mind.
Okay. I'd like, Dr. Piasek?
Just a very short comment. I just want to be clear that I made the decision in June, fully informed and aware of the decision that I was making. So Mr. Baumgart does not speak for me in his comments.
Okay. Mrs. Zenobia?
I think perhaps this point has already been made, but it's the progressive socialist left that has brutalized the mothers that sit on this board, and much of administration who are female. The Washington Post and everyone else that piled on this story brutalized moms with children in this district for a political gain. Moms who probably agree in some instances with them and with the progressive side of things. And when you release the attack dogs, they will attack everyone, which they did. Every person. I feel sorry for the mothers on this board. I really do. It's heartbreaking. I have 3 young children. I know how they feel. They feel worse than I do. It's disgraceful and despicable what's happened. And for us to sit here now and reconsider this position, we made an informed decision. And now we're going to kick it back to a program that does not service our kids. Does not service them well. It's a blanket decision for everyone. And it will continue to degrade this school district and all the schools that continue to accept it, just like the progressive thinking has wrought destruction upon our schools in every way imaginable. Through every child's a racist, COVID mitigation measures for the rest of time. Forced vaccinations, I'm sure, at some point. Whatever else. Our kids can't do math, they can't read, and here we are arguing over a free lunch program that we are doing our best to provide to the people that need it the most. And by going back on this decision, we will lose those people. We will destroy the program we had that worked. People say, most of the community didn't even know what was being said. They believe the lies the media spread. And countless people said to me, well, I grew up on that program. That program helped me. That program's helping my kids. Well, that's the program we want back. So we can make it better if need be. We have that power. But again, this is a politically driven firestorm that is now on the community. So again, it is an opportunity for us to unite and fix any problems that we have. It's just unconscionable what has happened to people for no reason. This is an issue everybody agrees on, even though we're pretending like we don't, that we want to all feed kids. And if there are kids that are not getting fed and not getting service, we need to do our very best to make sure they are. That's why there's 9 people that sit here and put up with this nonsense. Again, if the board thinks that it should go back on its decision, and if administration thinks that's the best, it's the wrong decision. It is a very, very poor decision, because if it's food today and free lunch today, it will be, forced masking, forced whatever we want to do in the schools. Because the mob will have the power to tell us what to do every time we walk in this building. And the shameful thing is, if there's any staff members, and I know we talked about staff, if there's any staff members that really did have an issue and fanned these flames and got involved in places they shouldn't, they should resign. There's a handful of people in this community that brought this up to this frenzy. Not even worth talking about who they are, but they know who they are. And now we all sit here beholden to a national mob because people can pile on social media from anywhere in the country. They can pick up the phone and call you. They can email you without having any name attached. It's just the mob mentality. And I'm not going to buckle to it tonight. I'm not going to buckle to it in the future. And I'm pretty sure most of this board isn't going to do it.
Ms. Roddy?
Thank you. Mr. Zenobia, thank you so much for, caring and saying those kind words. I appreciate it, and I know you did reach out to me before, and I thank you for that. But I will not give credit to this mob. This, not even that locally. I feel it's people who don't know any of us. Just the credit's not going to go to them. I did some further research after our last vote. I listened to some folks in our community, and it ultimately became the conviction of my own personal beliefs that had me choose to look into this again. So I will not give credit to them. Was it an awful weekend? Absolutely, but they don't know us. They don't know our community. So I don't want to give them credit for that. And please know that they're not to be credited for this. But through all this darkness, light has been shed on areas that we need to address. And like I said before, we're going to look into it. I think as a board, we should put a time limit. Let's not let this drag on. We don't need this to drag on, but we have the opportunity to help. And if this program can help for 9 months, whatever the school year is going to be, let's do it. But we then hold ourselves accountable and make sure that we put programs and not programs, systems into place so that we capture the data and the information that we need, which will then, help us with the learning gaps and everything else that we need to address. So I just, like I said, I appreciate you caring, but it's not because of this mob and this. It's not. I won't give them that.
Other questions or comments? I'd like to take a little bit of time. I'd like to hearken back to June. I thought we had excellent discussion at FNF. I thought we had excellent discussion at the board level also. I felt taking those votes, that's how I felt I should vote. It was the right vote to take, given our discussion, given our debate. Tonight I walk in here, and I, believe it or not, I don't have my mind made up. Okay? I like to listen to the debate. I like to listen to my fellow board members. We all bring something different to the table, and I appreciate that. Our different perspectives, our different talents, and we're the people that has elected us to represent them. I appreciate the audience letting us do our job tonight, okay? Passions are high. Everyone really, really knows how important it is to feed children. No doubt about it. The great thing, from my perspective, is this community is and will unite. Maybe we have different ways about going about how. The key word, it's a 3-letter word. How are we going to feed our children? How is that going to be accomplished? That's really what this comes down to. How are we going to do that? In June, I was convinced that our administration, and if you were to go back and watch those debates, I voted the way I voted because I was convinced that our administration would be able to take care of all the children. Now, they didn't have specific answers, but I remember that the information, that discussion that we had between board and administration, I was reaffirmed that we would be able to take care of our children. And I would think that that's why, and I can't put words in your mouth, but I would think that that's why we got a 9-0 vote. Because there's no one on this board and there's no one in the administration that wants to have hungry children trying to get through their work during the day. Nobody. No, I haven't heard anyone in the audience. I hadn't heard anyone make that argument to me. So, I'm very comfortable with what transpired in June. So the way I would summarize where we're at right now is how do we feed our children? Okay? I think there's arguments for the two ways that we should go. We could provide the summer seamless option, which is what administration was recommending to go to. I thought I heard that the reason why that was recommended was so we could feed all children. Is that what I heard tonight? That we would be assured that all children would be fed. But I also heard, right, that there are consequences with that. As Mr. McCaffrey and others pointed out, that we could have funding that would suffer, Title I and other potential funding. I also know that many nonprofit organizations rely on the free and reduced lunch numbers. So those organizations are hurt when those numbers are lower. So really what this comes down to tonight is one of two different ways of figuring out how to feed our children. Okay? So one way is to stick with what we originally voted on and make sure that we reach out to all of the community organizations that are set up to help with hunger. We need to be able to make sure that children do not fall in the cracks, if you wish, between the cracks. We want to make sure that they're fed. How do we identify those families? How do we identify those children? And I think we have an administration that would work very hard to do that. Extremely hard. I also know that that can't happen overnight. That can't happen in an instant. So where the SSO comes in, the summer seamless option, is we know that people who need food can get the food. So it really comes down to how do we do this? My hope is as a community, no matter which way this board votes, no matter which way we move forward or which program we choose, that this community unites and is truly earnest about making sure our children are fed. Okay. I think that's important. There's dead silence here tonight. I know you all agree we need to do this. We have to do it. We have to. Make sure that we feed our children. Okay. Excuse me, sir. Please. Yes, it does come down to how. It does come down to how. I'll stop at that right now. Okay. I know. I'm looking to see if there's any other comments. Okay. So is everyone clear on what the motion is? We're looking at either to rescind our decision back in June or not to rescind our motion back in June. And that motion was to go back to the National School Lunch Program. Okay, are we all clear on that? So a yay vote would mean that you would potentially want to continue to talk about, a yes vote, potentially talk about the seamless summer option. A no vote would be to continue to do what we decided to do last month. Okay, Sue. Any questions on that? Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Amanda Ratty,
Aye.
Kelly Piasek,
No.
Corey Montiel,
No.
Anthony Zenobia,
No.
Karen Reinacek,
No.
Greg Dietz,
Aye.
William Baumgart,
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey,
Aye.
Joseph Como. Joseph Como?
Aye. I th-
5-4.
So we have rescinded our decision back in June. Okay. So now we have to choose between two programs. We need to look for a motion to get on the floor to continue our business.
Right here.
Well, we only did the rescinding motion.
No, but if I pick up the part we chopped off, that's the rest of it.
Well, we need to
Yes,
start there or start somewhere.
I will start there. I would move to implement the federal seamless summer option, including open and restricted open sites. Enrollment in the seamless summer option will be for the 2021-22 school year and end on the last day of the school year, of school for the 2021-22 school year.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Roddy. Discussion? Okay. I think some people might have been surprised at my vote. I usually don't explain my votes, but I will. I will attempt to do that. Yeah, I don't agree with the bullying that's gone on. And I agree with Amanda Roddy. My decision was to vote in that direction. I could set the bullying aside. I believe it was important to make sure all children are fed. I also believe that this program should not exist forever, and that this board needs to make sure it does not continue forever. I think we need to have time. As I had mentioned, this comes down to a how are we going to feed our children. And I think right now, in order to make sure people who need the food can get the food, they can choose to have it. They can do that now. But I think we have to work fervently on developing the things that we all believed could be done back in June. I just didn't think we could do that immediately. I have a lot of people who supported both sides, both. I read all your emails. I appreciate your input very much. Again, for me, this came down to how. And I just didn't think that back in June, when this administration, back in June, I believe this administration could make sure we wouldn't have children coming hungry to school. I was sure of it. As I learned more about some of the situations that exist in our community, I became concerned that our administration wouldn't be able to reach them all. Okay? I don't believe that it's our number one responsibility as a school district to feed children. I think we can be part of the solution, but not the entire solution. So I'm going to go back to, for me, potentially, if going to the SSO program, if that does pass, it really needs to be finished as quickly as possible. But we need time to do that. And I think we need time to do that. Mr. Baumgart.
I'd like to support that by saying, can we find a way to commit to the records? I mean, we as a board can just say we're going to do that, because it's important. We have the records that Patrick talked about.
Well, I'll ask administration. What would you do?
More outreach, maybe partnering with some community groups to, further pass out the forms. Churches and other community organizations, I think, would be the only new thing. I don't think any more emails to parents or anything like that. You only can send so many emails effective. So we could certainly make that. And we'll also look further into the other optional DPI socioeconomic scales that are out there. Again, that hasn't been used in the past, so I don't mean not to speak to them. I just, when you had something that everyone knew and that was the measure, you tended to use it. That's why one of the most common stats mentioned to the school district is your free and reduced percentage. Everyone used it. It was the ruler, I guess. So there are some things. The hardest part, and we all know this, is getting the people to engage in a process where they have, you're essentially asking them to provide a lot of forms for no purpose this year. I'm not saying no purpose, but before you always had, well, I can get free meals. That was the motivation. So we can make more efforts. We're always looking for areas where we can improve in that endeavor. But I can't sit here, and I've never said I can reach every kid, in all fairness, Joe. So don't set, I just want you to, I don't want the board leaving here tonight thinking we can, because no one can. But there's more we can do, and we'll certainly follow any guidance that the board gives us in that regard.
I think one of the things that go ahead, Mr. Zinnober.
I was just going to ask Mr. Clark, I know this came up in previous meetings around this discussion, but this decision was passed in June. Here we are, the end of August. Do we have any sense of the amount of kids that we missed last year when we had the SSO program? As you said, we can't capture every kid. Did we lose kids in the SSO program?
You measure it by the applications, yeah. And Sherry, just agree with me if I'm saying the right thing here. If you measure by application, I think there has been some records lost. I think that's undeniable based on the chart that you referenced earlier. But that doesn't mean, hopefully, and I think we all hope for this, with a regular school year with the kids in our schools, hopefully on a daily basis, and not spread out over 2 virtual programs and hybrid, low bred, all the different things we went through. Hopefully that steady environment will provide a better opportunity for a more unified approach in capturing that. And that's the difficulty. Last year there were so many moving variables that made it's hard to say, well, it was because of this or that, but it certainly doesn't help. Didn't help with the structure last year. So, did I answer your question, Anthony?
Yeah, somewhat. It just, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's safe to say that, last year was due to COVID, and the program that we had, we don't really know how many kids we didn't capture. And so here we are a year later. We can't say with certainty that this program will capture more kids than the program we had in place for decades. And not only will it lose us other services for the very children we're talking about by not going back to the national program. Last year's not a good year to look at. Everything was skewed last year. Administration recommended this a month ago, almost 2 months ago. passed it, and now we're back to the same thing again, saying, nope, let's go try it a different way, the way that worked last year. Sends a message that we don't have the answers. And it would appear to me that if we go forward with this motion, that we will be losing more kids under this program, even with it being a blanket program, than we were before. And I don't see why we need a year's time to figure out where the problems are and how to fix those problems. I really don't. I don't see why we couldn't get a handle on this in a month and bring it back to the board and begin to fix the issues we have.
Mr. Montiel?
Briefly, the writing's on the wall, how I think this is going to go. But what we talked about from COVID from the beginning is most, if not all, government organizations are simply going to punt. They're going to wait for someone else to make the decision, wait for someone else to fix the problem. Every single organization except this board has punted. We took a decision to deal with COVID, all the mitigation factors, and with respect to this issue, it's difficult. I get it. There is no clear wrong or right, but we are punting. We are saying, until we can figure this out, let's do this stopgap. What I anticipate, despite best intentions, is when we revisit it, we're not going to have any new answers, and we're going to have to punt again and punt again and punt again. I'm sick of punting. My guess is we're going to have to punt, and I hope we can just stay focused on this and fix it. Among the 50,000 other things we need to fix in this district due to the current circumstances. So I hope we stay focused. I know as board members, we will keep our thumb on the scale to stay focused. So public, keep us accountable. Thank you.
Mr. McCaffrey?
So Darren, out of those free and reduced lunch forms, if you qualified for that, we had some latitude with fees in the district. What did that look like this year?
In terms of like registration
fees,
type
registration fees, technology fees. We had some back fees that I know that if you qualified for free and reduced, we would get rid of. We were discount fees. I mean, what did that look like this year? Was that higher? Because in my mind, that would be a way to capture at least some of the kids. You have to fill out the forms so we can waive your fees.
Yeah,
I agree with Corey. Going back to the SSO is a punt. And my concern is, and has always been, that we don't have anything set up to collect these kids in either side. And we need to figure that out soon. Because regardless, like I said, for me, either way, doesn't matter. It's that those funds that we need to capture, those benefits, those services outside of the food service. So, I mean, how did we handle that during this time? Because if the forms or the application was down that much, I'm assuming that our discounts of fees were down that much too. And if they were that high, I would be disappointed that we didn't collect that data. When somebody came and said, hey, I can't afford the $150. And I know that we get rid of that on many occasions if you're on a free and reduced lunch. So I would be disappointed if we didn't say, hey, why? And if they say, because I'm unemployed, here, fill out these forms, and then we can move forward with your request. So I just was wondering, was that down 60% too? Did it stay the same?
Unlike a lot of districts, not all of our fees and the deduct we might provide is necessarily tied to free and reduced.
Right.
So it's not a universal thing. One question that the board would have to decide, and I think that is an opportunity to collect some data, is are you willing to make participating in a sport mandated based on your willingness to fill out a form? I'd want some guidance. Because some people don't want to fill out those forms, and I respect their opinion. I'm sure I know you do too, Patrick.
Yep.
But is that what you're angling at, and if it is, I'd want some guidance from the
No,
board.
I guess what I'm angling at, if someone comes forward and says, hey, I want you to credit back my participation fees, not to participate in a sport, but when they come to us and say, hey, I can't afford it,
And
we have to ask the question.
We have a fee waiver process. I don't know if we've tracked, it's probably one thing we didn't track during COVID and the COVID impact. I wouldn't know off the top of my head tonight.
Because my assumption is most of those people would qualify, most of those students and families, because there's usually more than one child in the family, would probably qualify for the free and reduced lunch program. Because there's a reason that they're coming forward and they can't afford that.
And I think we have had those,
I mean, we talk about it at FNF.
my impression is we've had those conversations in the past. I don't have any numbers or anything to tell you how much it's swayed it, but I do think it is an opportunity to have that conversation because, athletics and group activities is something the kids are inspired to do, so.
Right. No, for sure.
Other questions or comments? I'll take a little time. I don't view this as a punt. I view this as taking some more time. I'm not ashamed of my vote back in June, which was, I believe, a more fiscally sound vote. And I believe that we're always needing to make fiscally sound decisions. But I think there are times where we have to give ourselves more time to improve what we have in place. And the relationships that we have with parents in the community, with the various volunteer organizations and churches, this is really important. You guys need to step up. You need to help us to identify the people who need this. I don't know, one of the things that I struggled with most is I eat every meal every day. I cannot relate to being hungry. I've been blessed. So as I was reading some of the situations, some of those situations, I just, it was, I didn't even know existed for people. I mean, I thought I knew this community pretty well. I've grown up here my whole life. I graduated from Waukesha South in 1980. I went to Saratoga, Butler, Central, and South, when it was a 6222 program. My daughters graduated from South. I was taught by my parents, through Boy Scouts, through my church, to serve others. That's what this board is trying to do, is to serve you. And I know not everyone's going to agree with everything that we decide. I know that. But I hope you realize that this board is very sincere and that this administration is very sincere. And Darren, it wasn't that I completely lost faith in you guys between June and now, okay? I didn't mean if that came, and I didn't mean to say you promised that you'd capture every kid, make sure every kid was fed.
No, I know that, Joe. I just wanted an attainable goal when we left here.
To me, this is buying some time. And actually, I wish we would have had the insight last year during COVID to maybe pay attention to this. How do we get more applications to come in so that we don't suffer with funding for other grants? We didn't have that foresight. We didn't. So I don't want us to be dependent on SSO, but I do think we need more time to give ourselves as a district to try and get those applications up, people who need it, capture them. We need to work with our community to make sure that that happens. Dr. Piasek?
So we have about $1.3 million in our food services fund right now, I think, as a balance. Oh, 1.75. Thank you, Sherry. And we've just decided that we're going back for more. We're going back for more. We get paid more per meal from the SSO program than we do on the free and reduced lunch program, right? Is that right, Darren? We get more per meal. Same food, pays you more. Why? Why would the federal government do that? Why would they give us more for those meals than they do for the other meals? You all know why. We know why. We have $1.75 million in our food services fund that we could use right now to close the gap and solve this problem all by ourselves, but we're going to go back for more. Who's making money off of this? The for-profit companies who run the food services for public schools. Okay, if that's what you guys want, that's where we're at. And this will continue. This program isn't going away. Has anybody looked at the infrastructure bill that just got passed? Billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars more for free food for kids in public schools, all schools, regardless of income. So now we know. Let's just go back for more.
Ms. Reinacek?
Thank you. Ms. Piasek, were you finished? Okay. Thank you. I feel like our teachers would know best who needs the help. And their eyes on those kids has always been our best, our closest option. And Jesus said the poor will always be among us. But I think it's whose responsibility is it? Is it the responsibility to... Is it responsible to, as everyone has pointed out, to feed everyone or to feed the kids that need it? And just as Ms. Piasek said, if we have that surplus, why can't we use that to help those teachers have something there? I know they buy granola bars, and I know fresh fruit is brought in from time to time and all of that. Can we do better there as to not create such a blanket handout for everyone? Can we provide the kids who need it right there when the teachers know that kid is hungry? I would hear from teachers where at the end of the week, after those kids were wearing those same clothes every single day, on Friday they would give them a new outfit and they would take them home and wash them and give them back to them on Monday. When those teachers have these issues, are they reporting them to the principal? I would think so. And if so, then what happens? Does the principal then call home and say something's going on? Do they have it investigated? These troubles have been going on before COVID. So what did we do before? And why now do we have to cover everyone? So I guess my questions are, what did we do before? How did we solve that? How did we solve the issues before when dealing with someone who needed help? And did we not do that well enough that we can use this money to do that better so that when the teachers see it, it's nipped in the bud and then something is followed up on? Instead of adopting this whole program and continuing with all and figuring out what are we going to do now? Those are my questions.
Well, we should give some time to administration to potentially answer those questions. Or were they just rhetorical?
Nope, I would like an answer, please.
There we go. Sorry about that. I do think a lot of it was the community helping itself, whether it was the school community or the greater community. And when I say the school community, it primarily falls on teachers, I think. The I'm sure the secretaries, I think anyone who's worked with a school secretary knows they wear about 50 hats, and one of those probably was helping kids in need and all the way through our rest of our staff. So I think we did that ongoing. I think we did it last year. I have no doubt that those situations occurred even last year with the free meals, because again, you're not reaching every kid, right? But in terms of new ideas and things going forward, we'd have to give it some thought. I mean, things we can do, sure. But we just need, more than 10 seconds is the question is being asked to come up with those solutions. So I don't mean to dodge the question, but a lot of rules and regulations tied to all this, and we'd have to work our way through that process.
Mr. Dietz.
Mr. Clark, could you tell us what that 1.7 million can actually be spent on?
Yeah, it's anything tied to the food service program. So equipment, we've used some for infrastructure, as was mentioned earlier. In terms of writing off student debts and all that, we couldn't, but
Could not?
Could not come out of that. But there's ways around. I don't want to make it sound like we're breaking the rules here, but maybe there's some things that we're charging to Fund 10 that could be charged to Fund 50, and the net is one and the same if you look at just in terms of total budget. So, what are you talking in terms of dollars? But there are restrictions on those funds. I think it's a good.
So it's not like it can be used to pay for food for students, individual students that don't have means.
Not directly, unless we transferred some costs that are currently in Fund 10 to Fund 50. We could we'd have to identify those costs, though. It's not, I don't know if it's an impossibility, but it would take some legwork.
And the general fund paying
Right.
for those balances, because you can never use Fund 50 itself to pay off the negative balance.
But budget-wise, you could at least come up with a piece to that puzzle and net out the two funds, but we'd have to talk about that more.
Respond? Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Reinsch.
Thank you. I just wanted to say the math that you're trying to do about fund this and fund that and how it has to be spent and all of that, that comes from taking federal money and state money and then trying to figure out what to do with it. And there's all this red tape on there. We're just doing that again, and we're just doing that in a bigger version. There's always going to be that. So as you just try to figure out how to move it around, I'm just wanting to point that out, that there's always that catch. Thank you.
Mr. Montiel.
Thank you. To Ms. Ranichek's prior point, which I think was excellent, and everybody kind of has talked about it, is how do we identify the students that need this? The students that don't have the parents that report it or unable to report it. We've talked about teachers identifying those students. I would remind the teachers, and I know this, they know this, but they're mandatory reporters. If a student doesn't have clean clothes for a week, that's a problem. If a student is unfed, that's a problem. Whether it rises to the CPS definition of neglect or imminent harm, I don't know, but please report it. They will investigate it. They will speak with the parents. They may screen it out. They may substantiate it. But that is an obligation our educators and our administration, I believe, has. It's also a moral obligation of community members. If you know a neighbor child has an issue like that, or even your family members, niece, nephew, anybody you know, a student that you think is hurting, that needs help, is being potentially neglected, maybe it'll be screened out, but call. Make it happen. There are resources there. I know these people. They are great people, and they are dying to try to find kids that need help. So please do it. Please, if you're a mandatory reporter, if you're not sure, report it. Worst thing that happens is the people who are in that administration, CPS, good people, will reach out and confirm that that child is okay. That's a good day. If we do it, turns out the kid's not okay, they will have resources, they will be identified, it'll help the district also identify those students too. So, Ms. Reinach, excellent point.
Other questions, comments? Mr. McCaffrey?
Darren, how much money runs through the food service coffers as a whole?
I'll go back to 18-19 as our last, our audited 18-19 numbers was almost $3.9 million in revenue. 4.9 in expenditures, but that was a construction year, so that's why the variance is. So I would say in a non-construction year, you have about $4 million kind of running through the fund.
That's for all grades? Because I know there's some, that's for all grades, that's all grades.
District-wide, yeah.
So I know there's some districts, and this is far afield, but I know there's some districts that only participate in the National School Lunch Program at the elementary levels and then fund themselves or at the high school level. So you said that we couldn't use that money to Dr. Piazik's point, how we're, and I've always had a problem with the USDA telling how much we can charge for lunches. Especially when they're trying to help out the students that can't afford it. So can you use that money not to pay off balances, but just not create them? If we have such this huge, and we do have a huge surplus.
Go ahead.
You wouldn't pay off a balance. You just wouldn't have a balance.
I'm going to chime in on that. The federal government, one of the reasons why we have the $1.75 million in Fund 50 is the federal government tells us what to set the prices at.
Yeah, for sure. That's been a problem of mine for years.
We actually wanted it to be lower,
right,
to lower that fund. We could not do it. DPI would not, or no, federal government would not
USDA.
allow us to do it. Would
USDA.
you elaborate on that? Am I correct?
Yeah, there's an equation we have to run every year.
Paid lunch equity.
Paid to lunch equity equation, right? That we have to run every year, and then they mandate, it comes out with a number, $3 or whatever the fee would be. And even if our costs aren't going up, we are asked or mandated to charge that amount. And that is the problem we have with that fund, is we're constantly asking for revenue that we wouldn't if we had free reign over that department. And had some of the regulations go away, we wouldn't be charging the amount we're charging. So I've had several conversations with many of you about different approaches and all that, and one of the easiest ones I thought of was if I could lower the fees, you could lower it from everyone if you wanted, but it's not that simple.
Due to the federal regulations.
Due to the federal regulations. The
Yes.
funny part
If we had
about
a choice, we would have. We wanted to, actually. I remember several FNFs where we wanted to do that. And so just so this is understood, the reason why we have our Fund 50 balance is not because this board made that decision to just push money away into fund balance. We actually wanted to reduce that, and we have restrictions on how we can spend it. We even have restrictions on what we can charge for lunch, and that's how it got run up, due to the formulas that the federal government provides.
and again, that's a federal.
Again, we were trying to be fiscally responsible as a board, and the rules disallowed us to accomplish that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, is the federal guidelines mandate that fee. The state level, the Department of Public Instruction writes us a letter every year saying our fund balance is too big. So we're in this constant kind of circular conversation. So just a little background for, so you know more about food service than you ever thought or wanted to probably, but.
Right, so could we use that money to fund our food service?
Not to supplement any paid students. So your thought of moving out of it for the high schools and then using that fund balance to support that program would not be allowed, because we're not allowed to supplement what are called non-program foods like a la carte or paid students.
Okay.
Are you done, Pat? or no? Pat still has the floor.
No. So the a la carte's an issue, is what you're saying?
Well,
If we use that money to fund our program?
a la carte and supplementing any student that would
Yeah.
not qualify for free and reduce anything other than the federal guidelines.
Right. Okay.
I know that there are other districts that
Yeah, there's quite a
don't do
few,
that,
actually.
but they pay for it out of their general fund. I talked to their food service.
Oh, is that how it works? They transfer to the general fund?
They have such a small percentage of free and reduced that when the students that are free and reduced, they still can get a free meal, but it's paid for out of that school district's general fund, which is education.
I think Sherry hit on it, and I don't know all the schools that have done that, but I would guess they have a lower or a higher socioeconomic district than we do.
So they subsidize the free and readers lunch?
Yes, I've called and talked to them to confirm that.
I saw Dr. Piasek's hand up first.
Thank you. Mine will be quick, but that's kind of the point. The point is that we keep taking these excess dollars and putting it into an account that has a lot of restrictions. I do believe that there are things that can be moved in our budget that have legacy living in different funds that can be moved. And there are other ways that we can use it, not directly applying to individual students, but in the interest of feeding students. And the problem with this program, as I said before, is that why are we getting more money for the same thing? And to Ms. Ranichek's comments earlier, this money is not free. It's not falling off trees. It is literally tax dollars that people have paid that's coming through to our district that we're actually having trouble spending on things that are actually meaningful to our students. How irresponsible is that? This is the problem. It's gone way beyond feeding kids.
Mr. Montiel?
Dr. Piasek is absolutely correct, and not to belabor the point, but I know for a fact there are local, state, and national legislatures watching this. Please be reminded by this conversation, and if you didn't quite absorb it, join the club. No one knows exactly what we're talking about when we talk about federal food funding for local districts. Maybe they do. I certainly don't get it. This is exactly what happens when you let the federal government determine how we feed kids at a local level. We can't even figure out what in the world's going on. At least I can't. And this is the difficulty that we have. Because of that, we're trying to fix it. Best intentions. I shouldn't say administration doesn't know, but we're trying to fix this. The reason it's so complicated is because the feds are involved. So whoever's listening, fix it.
I think that is a good idea. One of the ideas that we need to do is to perhaps have our government relations committee reach out to our legislators and point out the exact facts that you guys pointed out. I'm in agreement with you, Dr. Piasek. I see that. I understand that. I do not believe in just blanketly letting people come and get food permanently. I view that as a temporary fix. And I think we still, and I know I don't want to be a part of that forever from a board perspective. I don't think that that's what this district should do, is to become dependent upon that. So I like the idea of reaching out to our legislators, explaining to them what is the issues that we have. Try and write legislation that will help us to at least control our decisions at the local level. And in a manner that doesn't put us in a corner. Really give us control. Because we have the pulse on our community. We do. I agree with the statements made on we need our teachers. Our teachers are key in helping us move forward with this. Our legislators are key. The various volunteer organizations, churches are key. We have to pull together here. I do not want to become dependent upon SSO. I do not view this as a permanent solution, and I want you to know that. And I think our district has to work towards figuring out what's best for us. And that's not going to happen in just a day or two. We need some time on that. But we need to get going on it if this passes right away. Oh, Mr. Zenobia.
Thank you. Just to that point, if we go forward with the SSO program like last year, we're cutting the community out. There's no opportunity here, meaningful opportunity to really fix the problem. The nine of us and administration with the community, we are saying, you know what, it's just easier. It's just easier to go back to last year because all the noise will die down, meals abundant, and we'll just be fine. Everybody gets a lunch, whether they need it or not. And the community won't have to pay attention for a year. It will get punted, it will get kicked down the road. We are saying to the community, as the board, if we vote this way, let's just let the government run this school district. Let's just let the feds tell us what to do, because we don't want to do the hard work. We don't want to engage the community. We don't want the community that is seemingly divided on issues to come together and fix real problems that everybody agrees. They don't want their neighbor to go without. So if that's true, and I know that is true of the community, let's give them the opportunity to do it. You know, this is a local school district. This is a community. All the school districts in Wisconsin that probably don't even know that they took this program and are just sitting there taking the program, this is your opportunity to do the right thing for your community. Fix the real problems in our community, which is hungry mouths. We'll never identify them kicking it to the government again. You know, this came by way of COVID, and to Dr. Piasek's point, it's only going to get worse. There's only going to be more. There's only going to be more dictation as to the way we should conduct business here for the community. We're going to lose. We're going to lose. It's going to go the way of the dinosaur.
Mr. Barnhart?
Quite simply, I don't think we all agree with that. The community, a huge part of the community, responded in emails to us and voicemails to us that they want this program. It wasn't that the community is against this. So we are interpreting what went on differently. I'm just stating that fact. I think the community that spoke loudest says, we need your help. I don't think they said anything about forever. I think it's going to be a one-year thing. Now, we don't know. In June, we didn't know how bad the COVID situation was going to be this year. Remember that. That came on quickly since then. So I want everybody to think about the community in the same way that we just heard.
Ms. Reincheck?
Thank you. To Mr. Baumgart's point, the community responded to what I see as a lie. There was one tweet per second, one retweet. I am not on Twitter, so I don't know the language of Twitter, but it was retweeted every single second. And that wasn't even the truth. So the outrage wasn't even based on the truth. I just want to point that out. The community response was not on the truth.
Okay. Please.
But that's not what I was talking about.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Darren, how much would it cost us to subsidize our free and reduced lunch program?
Please, let us conduct our business.
Don't know if that's a number I know off the top of my head, to be honest.
We've not calculated it, but our percentages.
DP had in June.
Please, this is not an open dialogue. This is not an open dialogue. What was your question, Mr. McCaffrey?
I was wondering how much it would cost us to subsidize our free and reduced. I know it's a tough.
It's a number we could calculate, but we've never calculated that. But our percentages at the high school level are much higher than I know of that don't participate.
And it's usually just the high school level that doesn't participate, correct?
to my understanding.
They want the larger offerings, and that's my understanding as well.
But just to point out, their meal prices are also considerably higher. The one
Right.
district that I spoke to, their students are paying $4 to $5 a meal unless they qualify for free.
As
That's
compared to what do we pay?
$255 this year. Well, if we went. So there's a significant cost to the families in that situation to help supplement those programs.
I wasn't asked this question, but I've heard this, the cheese sandwich issue referenced many times over the last 100 hours or whatever we're on now. In 2018-19, to give you scale, we served 1,000, not even 1,000, 900 and some cheese sandwiches out of 750,000 reimbursable meals. So I think it's important, I don't know if it's changing the boards, but I think people need to know that we are not handing out cheese sandwiches left and right. Even an option for a kid to order a cheese sandwich, which comes as a full meal. So I don't want people leaving here thinking that that is our primary reaction to a student in need. So I've heard that so many times, I guess that's my moment of venting, so.
Other comments, questions?
Darren, if you could give me that number
Sure.
and send it over to me.
Yeah, I'll send it out in Friday's update, or?
Perfect.
Mr. Dietz.
I would say that
Yeah.
the community organizations that did come forward and communicate with us in email form mostly have every intention to assisting and helping us with student hunger in the future. And I would acknowledge that and thank them for the efforts and look forward to working with them.
Mr. Zenobia?
Just to clarify, I know there's many organizations in the community that have been helping, and I know they will continue to help. My larger point was all the people that are now engaged on this issue that haven't paid attention before are now engaged. If they want to help, this is an opportunity for them to help. One question to Mr. Clark. You had mentioned there was about 1,000 cheese sandwiches.
921 was the number.
So in this budget that we have, is it possible to give an option or to make that option better or a different option altogether? I mean, if that's a stigma attached, which I've heard, to this issue, isn't that small thing an easy fix? That's something that we could fix relatively quickly and to take away some of the stigma attached to that. Seems like a simple thing to me with what we have. Is that fair?
The balances are changing.
You mean serving something other than a cheese sandwich? Was that the crux of your question?
I mean, if it's only 1,000 meals.
I would think that'd be allowable.
It is
Allowable.
get the right result.
One quick solution we should embrace.
And I'm glad you brought up the stigma point. It's an excellent. It's one of the things that I was getting in emails and trying to understand the stigma attached. There's also stigma attached to filling out the forms. There's other stigmas talking about having perhaps a dysfunctional family that won't stand up for their kids. You know, there's really situations that I referred to earlier that exist, that there is stigma that surrounds it. And I think that is reducing that is one of the keys to the solution here. I don't have answers to that, but we need to look at that. We need our community to help us try and figure that part out. We need to pull together on this. I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Zenobia. I wish it was just with those few servings, but I think it is way broader than that, way broader. But I think that could be a solution for those students. Yes.
Follow that up. I probably had gotten lost. It was an early comment, but there have been people that said, yes, the forms are not being filled out. There may be a stigma attached to some. People just not engaged. Parents and families not engaged. Maybe they don't even know the service exists. Isn't it possible for us to engage the community to help us identify and collect those forms better? There's got to be a way to do that relatively quickly to begin this process. As I've said, we don't need a year. These few items we can fix in finance, and we can vote on it, and I'm sure we all will vote on it. At the next meeting, we can tackle this issue in a few months. We don't need a year to lose the kids who truly need this and to lose the families. The community wants to help us. Let's find those new people, those new partners that want to help us, and let's plug them in, and let's begin this process.
I agree. We need to start working on this now as a district and as a community, and to solve the problem as quickly as possible. We need to do that. Excellent. Yes, I agree.
For families who may be on that, wondering about the forms and all that, you can submit them centrally. The only way the school would know is if they're handed back in, or that's how they got them. But there's a central enrollment process that can be utilized for anyone who might be out there wondering.
So it's not complete anonymity, but that data can be kept at the central office, is what you're saying, and the local school doesn't need to know about it?
We just centralized it a couple of years back where they can't even process the applications at the schools. If they get them at the schools, they're simply sent to the business office. There's a very few number of people, maybe 3 people in the business office, that even look at those applications. So we try to keep it extremely confidential for families, and maybe that's what we need to do, is promote that better, so families realize that the staff at the school doesn't know what their student status is. It's really only just a few people.
I think that would go a long ways to help reduce the stigma. Might not be a silver bullet, but it could go a long ways. Mr. Montillo.
Thank you. I'm going to give this one last shot, then I'm going to give up. My understanding of the procedure now is we could not pass the motion on the table, and then at that point we could have a new motion to go back to the National School Lunch Program. And as a part of that motion, we could make it a requirement that we no longer serve cheese sandwiches, and that out of the district's fund, we pay for a meal of our choice. So we have the power, unless I'm mistaken, to do that right now and to fix that cheese sandwich problem, and to then do as we talked about, as everybody I think mentioned, get the community involved, kick this in high gear when everybody is motivated to do that and everybody's in the room. We were all here to feed kids. Put our heads together. So unless I'm mistaken, I think we can still do that.
I would like administration to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. I would offer this as kind of a thought. When it gets into operational things like that, I prefer the board not to decide tonight, and I can appreciate. But administratively, I would agree to no cheese sandwich until the September meeting cycle, to give us some time to really kind of, rather than chase a motion that, well-meaning maybe, but might be deeper than, as you can tell, this gets deep fast in this topic, and you would think food service would be easy. You picture a kid with a tray in a line, and that's that simple, but it's not, so.
We could have some breathing room. You'd have at least, it sounds like a month. Okay, sorry.
Mr. McCaffrey?
So, am I correct that we can jump in and out of this program on a monthly basis? Isn't that part of the?
DPI started with, once you're in, then it was the first of every month, and now it's down to any day.
Any day.
Okay, so we can jump in and out of the summer seamless option anytime we would like during the year.
I would like to say they told us we could jump into it at any point. We have not clarified that we could jump back out. That would need to be clarified.
Again, keep in mind that their answer on the first part took many different variations.
Right,
so
for sure.
It's hard to, and I'm sure they have a firm answer, we just have never asked them the question.
Are you done, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm confused as how a cheese sandwich even comes into play if we're having free and reduced lunches for everybody.
It does not in this current program.
So why are we talking about cheese sandwiches? Free and
It was
reduced lunches.
brainstorming on the stigma around
Oh,
it.
that's,
I think
yeah, and I understand the stigma, but that goes away under the SSO plan. Right?
Temporarily.
Yeah.
While it's in place.
Under the SSO plan, there
But
would
we
be
need
no
to still-
reason to use a cheese sandwich.
But I think the point is we need to resolve it if we're never on the SSO. When we roll off of SSO,
But the
we
mo-
need to resolve that issue, that stigma issue. Mr. Montijo.
Sorry, just to that point, my suggestion was not that. My suggestion was we can not pass the motion on the table, not go to SSO, have a new motion to go back to the National School Lunch Program and have that month, I think. So it's a little different than what Mr. Baumgart was saying, if I said that correctly.
Yeah.
I think we're not there.
So, okay. Other comments, questions? We're ready to take a vote? Okay, Sue, I want you to reread the motion, please.
Motion to implement the federal seamless summer option, including open and restricted open sites. Enrollment in the seamless summer option will be for the 2021-22 school year and end on the last day of the school for the 2021-2022 school year.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Sue,
I'm sorry,
Dr.
just
Piasek?
one clarification so we're all on the same page. Last day of school would be August, July, June?
The last day of school is June 9th, but June 10th is a snow makeup day, potentially, so we didn't want to list a specific day in case we had weather elements, so we just said the last day of school.
Does not include summer school.
Correct.
We would go back to our normal summer program. And the reason for that clarification is this program does end on.
Can you speak louder?
I'm sorry. The reason for that particular clarification is the program does extend to June 30th, but school districts are only allowed to serve it up until their last day of school. So it could be confusing to people if they saw, you can do it till June 30th, then we choose not to. That's not the case. We can only serve it on days we are in.
Thank you.
Ms. Reincheck?
Clarification. So if we adopt this tonight, then it's not that we can get out of it in a month because we're not sure if we can. So we will have this for the entire year, possibly.
Possibly. I don't know the answer right now. I can double check with DPI in the morning, but they have not specified the reversal. Now, for USDA regulations, possible to go back and forth, but DPI's implementation is a little trickier.
Okay, so any other questions on the motion? Mr. Zenobia?
Just a clarification. You had mentioned that if we are out of it and we're back to the national program, that we could in the future maybe opt back in. Sometime this year we could opt back into the SSO if we needed to.
Yes, that is correct.
So we could give ourselves a couple of months to begin to fix the problem that we have. And we could jump into it in a couple of months. We could do that. I mean, that is an option. I think that would be a much better course of action, but I want to clarify that. Thank you.
Everyone clear on what the motion is? Any questions on the motion? Okay, Sue, will you please take the roll call vote?
Karen Reinacek,
No.
Amanda Roddy,
Aye.
Kelly Piasek,
No.
William Baumgart,
Aye.
Corey Montijo,
Nay.
Anthony Zenobia,
No.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye, passes 5-4. Please. So what we just did is we passed a motion to go back to the SSO program through the end of the school year. I also heard that administration is going to be working hard along with us, partnering with our community members, working with our teachers, and trying to come together and unite around resolving this issue. And my hope is that we can do that as a community. We have no more business for this evening. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Tough place.